Thank you for everyone who offered questions, and I'd like to open it up to the panel. We've given them some of those questions and they're going to do their best to answer them.
What suggestions do you have for members of the API community in Marin who need language services or translation when no Asian languages meet the threshold criteria here? I think that the best suggestion would be to seek services, but the most important part is the request for translations. Right, so county services are still required to provide a translator, even if you don't meet a threshold language. So you can always request to have materials in your language and they would accommodate. But I think the key is, as part of the API community, is we have to complain. Like being quiet and being kind of submissive or just walking away does not help our communities. So it's important to come in and say, yes, this person is Cambodian, this is their dialect, I need something, I need an interpreter. If you can't find one, then I'm going to file a complaint. And I think a lot of times when I do that with clients, they get really uncomfortable. They'll say, no, it's okay, let's just go home. It's okay, I don't need the services. But the key is the advocacy part, is to say, no, it's important that I come with you and that I file that grievance, because that's how we'll get change, right? If, the county gets 20 grievances saying you couldn't provide an interpreter in my language, then they'll do something. But if it's kind of brushed away, if you walk home, no one ever knows, and I don't think anyone would come after you to help. So I think the advocacy piece, and then to complain.
Well, I'm going to answer both of these questions, because this first one is going to be really, really quick, right? Why did the governor veto the Home Act bill? We don't know why. We never got an answer. And actually, we have made every single attempt to try to find out. All formerly incarcerated leaders who was advocating for this bill, who actually did a lot of work, we reached out to the governor, right, to his office, asking for a meeting with him so that we can explain how the Home Act would mean to us, to our community, and he never answered it, so we don't know why. The other piece is, what can our group to help prisoners that are released? I love this space, and I feel really welcome, and I feel that it's a very beautiful space for API community, but just the Marin community to come together, learn from each other, eat together, build community, and deepen relationship, right? And I think for folks who are coming home, they've been isolated from community, they don't have a lot of resources, they don't know where to go. If you would open doors for them, welcome them, to functions, welcome them to dinners like this, maybe ask them to be a guest speaker of some of their experiences, and ask them what they need while they're here. I think that's like the best way to support them.
Can you talk about why having an ethics study in prison is so important? Ethics study, I think the reason why it's so important to have, it breaks down stereotypes, breaks down prejudice, it breaks down racism, and it allows people to be heard and seen. Because if we're not heard and seen, unless we learn about each other's history and culture and value, so one of the factors of our Roots program inside San Quentin is CHI. Anybody know about CHI? Is that ball of energy, right? But I want to break it down as an acronym for culture, history, and identity. Teach me about your culture, teach me about your history, and I'll teach you who you are.
What is the county doing to get the Vietnamese population to be more engaged and perhaps not be so closeted? Not a whole lot. In our department, there are exactly 3 providers that speak Vietnamese. So there's kind of limits to what we can do, and that's kind of the honest reality, is they hire us on and they're like, we got them. They're right there in the office over there. We did good. So I think there still has to be a lot more kind of like just community voices, people saying what they need, and complaints. You gotta complain. Because what I've learned is Asians don't complain. APIs do not complain. We're so polite, and we don't get anything at the end of the day. So what I've realized is that even my coworkers and I, we're like, we just have to complain. We don't like something, we need something, we have to complain, and we need to advocate for our clients to also complain on their behalf. We could do more. And I think the funny part is we do have 3 bilingual clinicians in this county, which is kind of a lot for a county that the population of Vietnamese is like under 1%. So it's kind of a lot. So they're like, we have a lot. There's 3 of them floating around. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. But I think we can do more. And I think these spaces are really important because then we can show that there is interest in this community and there are other professionals that want to come together and really advocate for this community. And the other question is, for a while, it seemed like every high school valedictorian was Vietnamese. Do parents push their children to succeed and excel? This is it's a complicated question. Yes. And a lot of it is, for a lot of like the immigrant and refugee population, they felt like academics was the way out of poverty, right? So they're banking on that one child to be the valedictorian, to go to college, to save the family. I was not the valedictorian, so my parents were like, oh gosh, I studied psychology, so they're like, oh gosh, this is not working. But they were really banking on their child to get them out of poverty. It wasn't me, it was my brother that got them out of poverty. There is that push, but there's also, I think, the lack of knowledge about mental health. There's also like high suicide rates for Southeast Asian Americans, right? They're pushing them in school, but their mental health is also not that great. So yes, there's a high push, but there's also the lack of knowledge of other health implications or other ways to be successful in this community. So for a lot of the community, they think that school and being valedictorian is the way out.
You know, I want to add a piece, because I love the idea of like, we need to complain more because we don't, right? And I'm learning, like, even with the youth, like we're telling our youth and our elders, like show up to the board hearing, the supervisor, like tell them what you think. Like show up, let them know that people are watching, that people care about it, that you care about it, right? And that they need to care about it, So I think that's a very powerful thing to show up, and just remind them that, hey, we're work for us, we're the community, like do something, So the question I have is, do prisoner prey on prisoner along racial line or other factors? So I'm gonna say yes and no. The very bad thing about prison is that prison is a very segregated environment. Make sure people fight amongst each other. It's easier for us to achieve more if we come together. Like Key said, the idea of ethnic study, learning about each other's culture and history, and learning that we all suffer the same trauma. We all have fear. We all, have gone through hardship. Like that a lot of stuff that you experience, I have experienced it, and I can see you as a human being because we both share that experience. Like that doesn't happen in any prison except very few, like San Quentin. That's why more people come to San Quentin, because people come together, right, and they work together. Versus most of the prison, they're like, this is your side of the fence. So this is the black, the white, the Asian, or the others, like the Mexican, we're all separated. We all separate ourselves, and the administration helped design that process so we can stay separated. That's why when we in prison as youth, like we have that extra mask because we can't show weakness, because the adult do prey on the young person. And sometimes young people get funneled through the system, they end up being used. And we call them torpedoes. They say the young person, like, here's a knife, you go stab that guy because he owed me money. That's your turn, it's your job. And then sometimes a young person don't know how to say no. They accept it, and then they do that. Prison is a violent place. The system itself perpetuates more violence, perpetuate the environment to be that way, because we have model prisons all over California. San Quentin isn't the only one. There's other prisons now too that have college campuses, restorative justice program in there. Like people are learning to be human beings again. People are learning to help each other versus like your resources, my resources, and I'm not going to share it. Right? Because that's what it's like in most prison. And when you hear about the violence and stuff that's happening, it's because those prisons is designed that way, to be violence, to be oppressive, to divide people, right, and not allow us to come together. So I think I learned when I went to San Quentin, I was like, we're going to college together. We're in study hall, we're studying together. I see a black guy helping an Asian guy with his homework. I see a Mexican guy talking about Socrates to a white guy. And so like, we're helping each other, grow, right? So I think that's an example that I want to see more in prison. But to answer this question is that people do prey on each other, and prison is a violent place, and crime happens all the time in prison, and it's because it's designed that way. One of my friends met an architect who built most of his prison. They asked him, like, why is prison so ugly? He said that it's designed that way to be punished people. So we design prison to punish people.
Would you describe if there are other rights denied to you due to your prison sentence? I heard IDs and jobs are denied. What about access to college, housing, and voting? Voting is definitely for felons. It's denied. Florida has changed some of its law where they allow some people with felonies to vote. But in California, that's still a process that is being worked on. We can be that change in the community. UC Berkeley, Sacramento State have access for formerly incarcerated folks. And one of our staffers is a valedictorian at Berkeley, and he's formerly incarcerated. That tells you, given the opportunities, people can change their lives, no matter what situation they've been through, what their past looks like. They're given the opportunity, right? So that's one thing that I love about America is that we are a land of opportunities, but a lot of times we have to fight for those opportunities, right? It's not given to us. Sometimes we had to fight for rights that we even had that people decided to take away from us, right? And so we had to fight for that. No, I like about complaining. I don't like just complaining, I like organizing. Like, we need to organize. Like, the hell with just complain. Let's organize the complaint as a group. Right? So, I like that. I found a loophole for the IDs in some of this situation because what I did was, I'm not going to just talk to the staff. Let me talk to the boss. So I talked to one of the head liaison of DMV and became pretty chummy with that person. Now we have a process where people that are getting out of prison that can't get an ID, we establish a form that they can use. The only issue is it depends on the county. Some counties like, I don't screw your form, I don't care about your form, I don't care what they say. So that is still a battle, right? Even though we have a processing that was approved, some counties are like, no, we're not going to accept that. It's an uphill battle every day, depending on the different counties that we're fighting with. If you have a contact for employment, mental health, like for people coming out, they need that. Access to not just healthcare, but also access to therapy.
I just want to open it up to the floor.
I just want to point out that it's important to have a group like yourself speak about the Southeast Asian experience. I mean, starting from 1882 and the Chinese Exclusion Act, every immigrant group has gone through this process of trying to figure out where we fit in, not to complain, but have the courage to speak out because we've been trained to be afraid and not trust the government as is because the Japanese were in turn. I mean, you know, you've taken already history, so you know this. But it's important for each of us to know each other's stories and to give support within and among Asian groups so that we're not fighting again, you know, like, no, it's my turn, you know. Everybody's gone through it. We know more now. Some are maybe more established, but this generational trauma lasts a very long time, keeps on being passed on. So even though, you know, we may have been here since the 1850s, there's still pushback. So it's really gaining the courage of understanding how to speak your truth, not complaining, you know, like, hey, this is what we're